Hey, what's happening? Today I'm going to talk about why your biggest challenges are actually your greatest gifts. So it's going to be a little breakaway from the normal anti-aging, longevity, mitochondrial things. However, this is a very important part of healing. At least it was for me. For my clients that are willing to go here, it's been very powerful for them. Not everyone's willing to do this. For me personally, making the physical and the lifestyle changes were easiest, but really kind of confronting my demons and doing the internal emotional work, that has been the most challenging for me personally. It's also been the most rewarding. And what I'm going to talk about today, it's really going to touch on that a little bit. It's going to get more spiritual, and it's really kind of helped me gain a different perspective of how I view life in the world in this experience that we're having. And I'm going to be sharing some different books that I've read that have really helped me with these different insights. And two of the books were given to me by a friend, and it was really life-changing reading it. And it really kind of confirmed a lot of things that I believe just from things from my own thinking and reading other things. But they're two different authors, and a lot of them kind of said some similar things. And the first author I'm going to talk about, he's a hypnotist. He's regressed thousands of people. And what he does, he actually regresses people into their lives between lives. So when we die, our spirit goes up into heaven, and he regresses people back to that part of their existence. And sometimes he goes into past lives as well. But the point is this life here on earth, it's all one big experience. We have an eternal spirit that lives on for eternity. Most of our spirits did have a beginning. I don't believe God had a beginning, but our spirits, we were created at some point, so we did have a beginning, and we live for eternity. So we live on and on. We have this one life in this physical body, and once this life ends, we go up to heaven. And what's really kind of cool is when we get up to heaven, we meet our soul guide, and we're debriefed, and you can actually watch a review of your life, at least of the major key points of your life. And what you're looking at are really lots of your biggest challenges and how you dealt with them. You're also looking at your different contributions, how you helped people. One thing they don't look at is, oh, you made this much money, congratulations. When you die, you can't take your money, but when you do die, you can take your knowledge, you can take your lessons, you can take your wisdom with you. That becomes a part of your eternal soul. So for me personally, I'm just going to share two of my biggest challenges, two of the most difficult things I went through in my life, and how they were my own greatest gifts. And then I'm just going to share some different excerpts from these books that were very meaningful to me. And I'm hoping this talk changes your perspective on things and gives you a different way of looking at life and looking at the big challenges in your life. So now it's been like 16 years. I started having a downward decline in health, and for about a decade, I wasn't feeling good. Physically, I looked good. I ate well, I exercised, so I looked fit, but I was struggling with fatigue. I wasn't sleeping well. I had indigestion, and over the years, these things got worse and worse. Then I started having brain fog. I was having anxiety, and then that was causing me depression. It messed with my confidence. And I eventually found out I had Lyme disease, and I got put on a bunch of antibiotics and supplements, antifungals. I had candida. And I ended up getting much worse. I lost a whole bunch of weight. I went from 175 pounds down to 140 pounds at some point. If you follow me on different social media, I have kind of like a before and after. There's a picture of me super skinny, and then 18 months later, I kind of look like I do now. And I was able to gain back even more muscle and completely turn things around. So I was at a very low point in my life when I was dealing with all that. But that was a lesson from the universe that A, I wasn't living my life right, but also B, that was an opportunity for me to create and to move into a new direction in my career. I had a corporate job. I was successful at it. made a good income, lived a good life, but inside I wasn't happy. There was definitely something missing, and I didn't have passion for what I did. It was a very stressful job, especially the last company that I was working for, and I was just kind of stressed to the gills. My health was getting worse and worse, and once I finally confronted that and took that responsibility into my own hands, had the realization, this doctor, he's charging me a lot of money, he's not helping me, I've got to try a different approach. And that started me on the path of learning what drives health, what creates disease, and learning what to do to avoid the things that create disease and do more of the things that drive health, which is the main focus of this channel. Those are the things I normally talk about. But this is a really huge part too, because until you kind of confront these challenges, you're gonna keep on dealing with them. And until you learn the lessons, you will keep dealing with them. And these lessons are hard. They're very stressful. And if you're not effectively managing stress, like I was not for many, many years, I was stressed all the time. But to manage that stress, I wasn't really managing it. It was really just distracting myself from the stress. I drank to excess. I did a lot of partying. I would watch a lot of TV or just movies that just wasn't adding value to my life. And there's nothing wrong with having your favorite shows or TV. But for me, it was like 2 hours a night during the week. On the weekends, it was just partying. And I just wasn't addressing the issues. And it led to a decline in my health. That actually led to my second challenge that I'm going to talk about. But me getting sick actually led me down the path of finally leaving my corporate job that I talked about leaving for years and pursuing something that I'm passionate about, which is helping other people turn their health around, which I'm doing now. I'm so much happier. And there's still things I'm working on. There will always be things to work on, but if I didn't get sick, I wouldn't be where I am now. Now, also when I was sick, I expended all my energy throughout the day just to perform at work and to put on this front that everything was good, because I didn't tell anyone that I was working with. Once I found out I had Lyme disease, I didn't tell anyone I was being treated for Lyme disease because I worked at a very competitive consulting firm. And I figured that would put a target on my back. So I was doing all I could to kind of maintain my presence at work. And by the time I got home, I didn't have the energy for my wife at the time. And I could be really short with her. I could be a dick. And I wasn't giving her the emotional needs. I wasn't meeting her emotional needs. And we drifted apart, and my marriage ended when I found out that she was having an affair. And in hindsight, when it happened, it was the most hurtful, most horrible thing that ever happened to me in my life. And but in hindsight, I see how I contributed to that. And I'm not saying it's okay to have an affair. She could have handled it differently, but I definitely played a very big role in that, in her having the affair, which ended up, we had a divorce. I ended up meeting someone, and I have an amazing relationship right now. We have a 4-year-old. He's about to turn 5 in about 2 weeks. And that has just completely changed my life. And a lot of the lessons I learned that kind of got me to the point of divorce, I've been working on. Really had to work on my patience, on my compassion, on having empathy for other people, and especially in my relationships, and learning to be a better communicator. I'm still working on that. Made a lot of progress. But these are some things I've really had to confront and to work on, and it really has been life-changing. So again, for me, it was pretty easy to do things like do ice baths, which was a major key for my healing, to change my diet, to do physical things. I've always had good willpower for that, but on the mental side, that for me, it's definitely been more challenging, and kind of understanding why we have these challenges has made it a whole lot easier. And the really interesting thing, one of the interesting things I got out of this book, is when we're up in heaven, whatever you want to call it, another dimension, the spirit world, we actually have a choice of different bodies in different life circumstances that we can choose. and we know the major challenges we're going to have. And as a soul, as a spirit, we want those challenges because, remember, soul is eternal, and a soul wants to grow. When you're up in heaven, there's classes, you're in courses with other masters, learning how to evolve as a soul, which never ends. But then for the human experience, those are some very important lessons that you can't learn as a soul, because souls, they don't judge, they don't have guilt, they don't have shame. And on earth, it's a very different human experience, because humans can be pretty cruel, they can be evil, and they can be very amazing as well. So there's a much broader range of emotional experiences that we experience on earth that we do not experience in this other dimension, being the spirit world. But you choose your body. So if there's something about your body you don't like, you actually chose that. If you have a disability, most likely you chose that disability. And it's because there's something that you wanted to learn, that you wanted to develop. It could be a karmic lesson. Maybe you injured somebody in a past life. You caused somebody to be a cripple, and now you don't have use of your legs or something. Doesn't necessarily mean that happened, but that's a possibility that may have been why this happened. So it's a different way to look at things, but all the challenges you're faced with, there's a reason for that. And if you want to evolve as a spirit, you want to take on those challenges. You want to learn the lesson. Always be looking for the lesson in the different challenges in your life. So I want to talk a little bit about a few passages from this book, Journey of Souls, Michael Newton. Really awesome book. And this Michael Newton, he regresses people into their lives in between lives. And he's done this with thousands of people. They all have very similar stories. And got a few little bookmarks here. But I just want to read a few passages that I found really interesting, and that hopefully help you if you're having a challenge. And we'll give you some different ideas on things you can do to help you move on from that challenge. So we all have a guide. We all have a soul guide. I mentioned when we die, we go up to heaven. We are reunited with our loved ones. But before that happens, we sit down with our soul guide and we go through, we do a review of our life, what we did well, our sins, what we didn't do so well, how we hurt other people, different things like that. And it's not to judge you, it's to help you learn, it's to help you grow. So, guides only want what is best for us, and sometimes this means they must watch us endure much pain to reach certain objectives. Guides cannot assist in our progress until we are ready to make the necessary changes in order to take full advantage of life's opportunities. So if you're not willing to change, your guide is going to continue to watch over you. They're going to continue to, cause a bird to poop on your head or something. Whatever it is that needs to happen for you to learn the lesson. The challenges will keep on coming until the student is ready. So let me find this next passage here. So this kind of speaks to what I just said, but in this other person, he regressed. He was basically asking, okay, how do we seek support from our guides? And he says the subject that was under hypnosis says, by silence, reaching inward to fasten on their inner voice. So lots of times when we have a challenge, we're completely focused on the challenge. I can't believe that person said that. I can't believe I got fired. I can't believe I'm dealing with this issue, blah, blah, blah. And when our focus is on that, we're not able to make connection with our guide. And that can be our spirit guide, or it can be other people. It could be your grandmother up in heaven trying to kind of point you in the right direction. But that connection isn't possible when we're fixated on the problem. So we've really got to, and this is why meditation is so powerful, but we really need to go within, really feel within our body and bring our focus inward. The other thing he says, they must reach out beyond what is troubling them in order to be receptive to me. that's difficult when they don't remain calm. So learning how to manage your emotions, learning how to process stress is very important. If you're a constant stress case, if you freak out when the unexpected happens, then you're going to have a challenge getting help from up above. And there's this research paper I recently read. It's on emotion regulation, and people that are able to regulate their emotions, they're good at managing stress, or they even use stress to drive them. They have longer life expectancies than those that do not do well with stress. So if something happens, you freak out, that creates inflammation in the body. It creates different stress hormones. And when you're doing this chronically, the research paper was focused on cardiovascular disease, but that can increase your risk for all chronic disease. So learning better emotion regulation is going to help you extend your life. It's also going to help you get in touch and receive guidance from your soul guide and from other people kind of in your soul network. So for example, having a soulmate, that doesn't necessarily just mean a lover. It can be a good friend of yours that you've lived many lives together. So in many cases, it can be a lover, but there can be friends that you have lived multiple lives with. And if you've ever met somebody and you just kind of click, you have that instant chemistry, and it's almost like, hey, I think I know you. And if that happens to you a lot, that's you meeting people that you've most likely known from past lives. Pretty interesting. The other thing I had highlighted here, the energy of directive thought must override human emotion. So again, learning how to process those negative emotions. I do have another video. It's a very simple 3-step process to help you virtually just dissolve stress and negative emotions. There should be like an I somewhere. If you click on that, I'll link that video, but finish this one first before you watch that one. Let's see. Oh, so this is a passage, and I was talking to this before, of how, when a soul is inside a damaged body, this choice can involve a learning path to another type of lesson. So this talks about one of his subjects or patients, and I think this was a woman. So he says, the freedom of choice we have with the bodies is based far more on psychological elements than from the estimated 100,000 genes inherited by each human being. This book was written before we had the Human Genome Project. We have about 25,000 genes, not 100,000. But the point is your genes are not your destiny. You have the thoughts that you think of are much more powerful than the genes in your body. And actually, your thoughts can activate genes. So positive thoughts activate genes that can extend your life. Negative thoughts can activate genes that can shorten your life. But this was a woman, and the first life he regressed her to a past life. She was a Viking. Her name was Leth. She was a male, and I'll just read a little bit about Leth. He carried an axe and a heavy, broad-bladed sword, which he wielded easily in battle. So this guy was a real warrior. Vikings, if you know anything about them, they go to other villages, they rape, they pillage, and he was just asking, did Leth ever mentally was Leth ever mentally troubled by anything? And she burst out. She's under hypnosis. Are you kidding? Never. I lived only for each day. My concerns were not getting enough fighting, plunder, food, drink, and sex. All my feelings were channeled into physical pursuits. What a body. So he goes on to regress her to other lives, and he regressed her to another life where she was a girl. And when she was a little girl, I think she was around 7 or 8, This is back, I think it was in the 1800s. She was in a horse-drawn carriage, and this was pre-contracted. So before she came to Earth, one of her lessons was she really wanted to develop her intellectual capability. She had been a warrior of many lives with just a big, powerful physical body, just kind of did whatever it wanted. And in this life, she was kind of a smaller child, 7 or 8, and she was in a carriage. I think she was being kind of mischievous. She fell out of the carriage, and the wheels ran over her legs. She was paralyzed. The doctor said she'll never walk again. And this is in the 1800s, where we didn't have the capabilities we have today. She was in a lot of chronic pain, so she had to learn to live with chronic pain. And her parents were pretty well-to-do, so she was afforded tutors and things. And she became a very successful writer, and she made some very big contributions, I guess, at the time. But her soul kind of nudged the little girl. She was in this body of this little girl. She kind of nudged her to fall out of this carriage to have this accident. So it's kind of interesting. And if you look back on your life, if something has happened, you may want to kind of ask yourself, is this something I had a soul contract for this to happen, for me to learn some kind of lesson in my life? It's very interesting to think about. And when I was reading this book, I'll probably reread it just because it's so good. I just finished a second book of this guy's, and there's just so much interesting content in here. Just talking about how people, once they regress, they realize that their past mistakes were not failures, but the means to improvement. So never be afraid to fail at something. Be afraid not to do something, because when you don't do something, you're never going to get the lesson. You have a 0 chance of winning if you don't do something. So if there's been something that you've been wanting to do, you've been holding off on, go ahead and do it. If you fail, great. You learn a lesson. If you succeed, great. Do something else. Maybe you'll fail and learn a lesson at that. Let's see. This is another important point. We don't need to change who we are in relation to life's experiences, only our negative reactions to these events. So if you've learned anything from this past year, shit is going to happen. It will continue to happen. And there are people that are just lots of people have actually committed suicide. They haven't been able to take the change. People have lost their jobs. They've lost businesses, all sorts of things. And those people, they may have contracted to learn this lesson of COVID. As souls, we can see into the future. We know it's going to happen before we come down. But those lessons will have to be learned again. And it's really sad, and I'm not trying to belittle those who just couldn't handle everything, and they decided to take their own life. But these are all lessons, and in a sense, we all chose what is happening today. We knew it was going to happen, and we chose it so we could learn how to navigate tyranny. That's one of the lessons here. So we can learn there's a ton of peer pressure today. Should I take the jab? Should I not take the jab? Some people, they just want to take it, great. But lots of people, they don't want to take it. They're feeling very pressured into doing that. So you might want to ask yourself, if you're on the fence, is this something I'm doing because I'm following my truth? Or am I just kind of caving to peer pressure? It's horrible these days. When I was a kid, peer pressure wasn't a quarter this bad. Peer pressure was pretty bad when I was a kid. Then also, sometimes a negative trait is selected by an otherwise developed soul for special attention in a certain body. So there's a trait you don't love about yourself. Chances are you chose that because there's a lesson there for you. Always look for the lesson. Okay, I think that was everything I want to talk about for this book, but I'll put a link to all the books below if you want to get them. The next book I want to talk about is Many Lives, Many Masters, Brian Weiss. And this book is all about just one woman. So this guy, he's a psychiatrist, And there was this woman, she worked in the hospital he worked, they got connected, and she was a very, very beautiful woman. She was having an affair with a married man, and she had some really big challenges she was working on. She had extreme anxiety and different phobias, and she was with a married man, so that's an issue there too. And this psychiatrist, he actually discovered this on accident. He'd been working with this woman for over a year. He wasn't making too much progress. And in the beginning, he suggested hypnotherapy. And she was just like, no, I'm not ready for that. So I forget how long it was, like 12, 16 months into their work together. He brought it up again, and she's like, all right, we haven't really made much progress. Maybe we should try hypnotherapy. So he regressed her and brought her back to, 5 or 6. And she was molested as a child. And that kind of helped with some of the things, but there were still some challenges that it didn't address. So he regressed her again, went back to 2, and there was nothing. And he said, all right, go back to the time of the incident. And so he brings her back, and he's asking her questions, and she's saying some strange things. He's like, what year is it? And it was in 1800 BC. So it was this woman had an interest in Egyptian artifacts or something like that. And this was actually in Egypt in the 1800 BCs or something like that. So he discovered this on accident, and then he worked with her for another year or so and just kept on regressing her. And he was able to resolve all of her phobias. Turns out the married man she was having an affair with, she had lived several lives with him. But she ended up leaving this married guy, and she went on to live a pretty normal life. But just a really fascinating book. And if you have traumas that you've been working on, and you haven't had luck resolving them, they may be traumas from a past life. So that's something to consider. And you may want to seek out somebody that can regress you back into past lives. I've done some of the work myself. I haven't done a past life regression, but I've worked with mediums and people that can kind of see into past lives. And I've learned about some of my past lives. It's been very interesting. I've been a warrior in several lives. This is what I've been told. I was a gangster in a past life. There was a past life where I was a victim of pedophilia. But most of us, we have been the opposite sex in past lives. We've been different nationalities. We've been white, we've been black, we've been Asian. I was Japanese in a past life. You can't see it because it's blurred out, but there's one of the pictures I have on my shelf back there. It's of me when I was just a little baby. It was a year or so, with 2 Japanese girls. And when I was a baby, I lived in Japan for several months, 4 or 5 months or something, I forget. And I've always had an interest in the Japanese culture. Shogun was one of my favorite books. There's another book series I love. The main character is half Japanese, half American. And I've just always had this, I've been drawn to the Japanese culture. And it turns out I was Japanese in a past life during the feudal days of Japan. So if you have different interests, something else, I've always been drawn to gladiator movies, Spartacus, and just watching just these old battles. I loved it. And it turns out I was a warrior back in those days in several lives. So pay attention to the things that you're drawn to, and most likely you've lived that in a past life. So I just have a few passages in this one, but this one's important. Wisdom is achieved very slowly. This is because intellectual knowledge easily acquired must be transformed into emotional or subconscious knowledge. So you've got to take action. It's not enough just to read a book. For self-development, that is. I'm sure we all know people that they're just constantly reading these self-help books, but they never do anything. They never grow or evolve. But you read a book, if there's something that resonates with you, do that, make that a part of your life. And you don't achieve wisdom until it becomes a part of your subconscious mind. It's got to be automatic, where you don't even think about it. You just do it naturally. That's wisdom. Once transformed, the imprint is permanent. Behavioral practice is the necessary catalyst of this reaction. Without action, the concept will wither and fade. Theoretical knowledge without practical application is not enough. So remember, you can't take your possessions to heaven with you. You can't take your knowledge, your skills, your wisdom, your experiences. So that's what life is all about. If you want to feel fulfilled, work on acquiring wisdom. Work on gaining new experiences. Work on addressing your different challenges. Here's another important one. Our bodies are temporary. We are souls. We are immortal. We are eternal. We never die. We merely transform to a heightened state of consciousness, no longer needing a physical body. We are always loved. We are never alone. And we can never be harmed, not at this level. So obviously your physical body can be harmed. Your soul is going to live on. It's eternal. There are many people up in heaven or another dimension, whatever you want to call it, that love you very much. And there's a part of you that's up there with them too. Not all of your soul comes down into your body. In fact, your soul can be in two bodies at once. It's rare, at least according to these authors, so I have no idea how often it happens. But actually, Michael Newton touched on it. Brian Weiss, I don't think he touches on it. But it is rare. It does happen to his understanding. So you can you can split your energy with your soul. So if there's, if you miss your grandparents or your spouse, or maybe you lost a child, but their soul is up in heaven and you'll be reunited with their soul when you die. You go up to heaven, you'll get debriefed on your life, then you're going to be reunited with your soulmates, people that you've lived many, many lives with. And it's really interesting when people go up to heaven, there's all these people they recognize, and they're just like, oh, I knew them from this life and this life. And you'll be in classes with them, learning new lessons up in heaven until you choose to incarnate and live a new life down on earth. But we all have lessons to learn in this school called Earth. We need to comprehend completely the concepts of compassion, love, nonviolence, non-judgment, non-prejudice, patience, generosity, and charity and hope. And if you look on the history of Earth, there has been a lot of violence. And part of the reason for that violence is to learn the lessons of violence is not the answer. And we still have a lot of violence today. So I don't know if we're making any progress in that. I know overall, for most of us, life is a lot more peaceful. There's still a lot of regions on the planet where it's not peaceful at all. But I think, by and large, there's been a big improvement. We still have a very long way to go. But if you want to progress as a soul, you've got to focus on these different things: compassion, love, nonviolence, non-judgment, non-prejudice, patience, generosity, charity, and hope. For me, big ones are non-judgment. I was a judgy person most of my life, still working on that. Patience. That's a very big lesson for me, learning patience. And all of these I can certainly improve on. I mean, I'm not a violent person, so I think I have nonviolence down pretty well. But if you need violence to save your life, that's okay. But doing violence to get something just because you want it, that's not okay. One other thing, we need to recognize the deceptions and traps of the ego and how to transcend them. We must become aware of the interconnectedness of all living beings, that energy connects us all, and that there is no death, only life. So just a few more passages. This is Messages from the Masters. This is another Brian Weiss book, but when we die, our souls progress to higher dimensions. We take our behaviors, our deeds, our thoughts, and our knowledge with us. How we treated others in relationships is infinitely more important than what we have accumulated materially. We may gain and lose many material objects during the course of our lifetime. You will not meet your possessions in the afterlife, but you will meet your loved ones. This thought should help you to rethink your values if necessary. So there's a lot of greed in this world. What's happened this past year, I believe a lot of that was driven by greed, not just greed for money, but greed for power and domination as well. So keep that in mind. Always endeavor to raise your vibration, to learn your soul lessons, to help other people. There's another passage I meant to read. This isn't it, but this is another good one. Our transformation from total ignorance to perfected knowledge involves a continual process of enlightenment by having faith that we can be better than we are. So always have faith that you can be better than you are. To become up in heaven, there's 5 different levels. Level 1 is just a junior soul. Level 5 is an ascended master. And that takes thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of years to achieve that level. So it's a very different time frame. Everything's relative. So what seems to be long here on earth is just kind of a blink of the eye in the spirit world. But I must have skipped over the passage. If you want to really progress as a soul, then the way to do that is the more people you help, that's how you progress as a soul. So a lot of people are really driven by money, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with money. A lot of people that make a lot of money really contribute to many people in many, many ways. So that's kind of the ideal. If you can contribute and really help a lot of people and make some money doing that, then you can live very comfortably. You can also take that money and you can invest it to help other people. You can donate it to charities, whatever. I'm not trying to tell you how to live your life, but I just want to give you some recommendations to really help you feel more fulfilled and to really make the most of this life. So when you get up to heaven, when you meet your spirit guide, they pat you on the back and they say, you nailed it. You did a great job. You learned all of your lessons and then some. And that's what it's all about. It's the long game. It's not just this life. It's evolving our soul throughout eternity so we can be the very best we can be. And having that faith that you can always be better than you are today. So I know this was kind of a long one. Thanks so much for checking this out. I hope you found it interesting. Hope you got some value from it. If you have any comments or questions, then please, you can ask below. I'll link the books in the description box below. If you liked it, give it a like. If not, you're probably not listening anymore. But also, if you feel this would benefit somebody else, please share it. And I'll be back again real soon with a new video.